Welcome back to the Chuckville War, formerly Sneedville. Today we're doing part 2 of a series of battles. It's actually the same battle, but a number of viewers have fought this battle using the orders of battle and the situation as I set up. Kind of. Some of you guys took the information. Here's the basic story. You've got Knoxville is trying to recover their territory, Sneedville, from Kingsport. The Army of the Pines has been ordered, they fight for Knoxville, to go dislodge Jones' army, who fights for Kingsport. Meanwhile, Jones' army has been ordered to dislodge the Army of the Pines, drive them back north of the Cumberland Gap. So we have a battle somewhere here between Harrogate, an unlabeled town south of Cumberland Gap, and Sneedville. Somewhere in this area, and I figured it would take place right here at this little crossroads. Some of you guys said, hey, there's little roads that come through here. This fight could take place in a lot of different places. Now, in our last video, we looked at 4 different instances, and in each of those instances, the Army of the Pines got to within spitting distance of Jones' army and stopped, took a defensible position, and said, yo, come at me, bro, come at me. And the Jones army, following their orders, were happy to oblige, much to their chagrin. Now, it's just kind of a happy accident that those 4 battles were all won by the forces of Knoxville. Today, we're going to look at 2 instances that are cases where the Jones army comes out on top. Oops, did I spoil it for you? Not really, because these are very different. And I think, just don't lose sight of the fact that one of the things we're doing here is looking at how different tables, different groups of people can take the same information and arrive at a battle that's very similar and is likely to lend the same results, or can look at the situation and say, nah, man, I think it's going to go down a little something like this. That battle's not going to be fought over here. It's going to be fought 5 or 6 or even 10 miles to the east. So the first kind of entry that we have today, and then just to let you guys know what the future holds, we basically have a Knoxville bracket. We got 4 battles where Knoxville comes out on top, and we're going to bet there's a poll up already on my community tab. We're going to put a poll together for these 2 battles, and then we'll kind of figure out, okay, if Knoxville wins, what's it going to look like? If Kingsport wins, what's it going to look like? And then we'll probably do like a live stream and just do an informal poll in the chat to say, all right, guys, now you've seen it. Or maybe we'll even roll a die, right? We've got now 6 battles, and it's 4 votes of Knoxville winning to 2 votes of Kingsport. So maybe we roll a die, and on a 1 through 4, we go with the Knoxville, and on a 5 or a 6, we go with the Kingsport, right? Fair, impartial, arbitrary, all the things we like in a military miniature war game campaign. So with all that out of the way, we're going to start off by talking about the battle fought by a fellow by the name of Napoleon 1066. In the last video, I mentioned that he submitted a fight, but I couldn't see it because I don't use Facebook. In all seriousness, on just kind of a personal note, there's a whole lot of social media sites out there, and to simplify and streamline my life, I have kind of limited my exposure to those on purpose. I know that cuts me out of a huge raft of miniature wargaming content, and I unfortunately you just can't do it all, and so that's part of the problem. That's on me. That's my problem. Now, that said, I would like to thank Napoleon 1066. That's his internet handle. I think his name is available, but just for the sake of operational security, if you're really curious, you can go find it. He has a blog called. So he worked with me. He sent me a couple of different links to where he posted his fight on his blog called guernseybattles.blogspot.com, and that's Guernsey spelled Guernsey, just like the town in Great Britain. God save the king. And my condolences to those of you who are mourning the passage of your great leader after her Diamond Jubilee. It's been refreshing to see the outpouring of love that the Britons have for their leader. I got to be honest with you, I'm a little jealous. I haven't felt that in about 2-3 years. But anyway, be that as it may, we're talking about Napoleon 1066 was kind enough to upload his fight. Now, he isn't playing a miniature war game, which judges, all right, they'll allow it. We're going to the judges. They're okay. He's using Command and Colors, the Napoleonics game, which looks a little something like this when he set up his battle. Now, I'll point out, I kind of put down some labels on here because this is a block game, and I have no experience with this. This is very interesting for me to see how an independent battle like ours can translate to a block game like Command and Colors. And the labels that you see on here, where the artillery are and the cavalry are, everything else is infantry of one sort or another. That's kind of to help you understand what the setup is, and I think it'll help as we go through the discussion of what happened in this battle. It is a very interesting instance where, and I don't think I can recall an instance where, like, this is one of the holy grails of Napoleonic wargaming. The combined arms working exactly the way it's intended. His fight had bayonet charges, it had like flank marches, it had all kinds of great Napoleonic stuff, but I want to draw your attention to this. Oh, and it's a card-driven game, apparently. So here we can see that one of those cards is assault left flank, and this is a case where you wind up with a cavalry battle over there on the left, and this must be played by the nice thing is the blocks here, as you can see, you've got red and blue blocks, so we know that red, our default is, the red armies are going to be Knoxville, the blue armies are going to be Kingsport. Makes it easy to track, makes it easy to remember, to translate directly from the campaign down to the tabletop. You also have a situation where you've got Bombard, and this Bombard comes into play because, as I was saying, we've got some combined effects. You've got, up here in the upper right-hand corner, I labeled the Orphans. There's the 2 blocks. It's a reduced strength regiment there. The blue arrow to the right here is the cavalry swinging around and hitting the line in the flank. That unit then forms square, as one does when your infantry charged by cavalry, which allows the artillery over there on the left to open fire and just absolutely decimate that unit. Now, things went poorly because of this situation. Sorry for the slam. Because of this situation, this was going to continue going on with the cavalry rolling up that flank, pinning infantry down so the cannon could go to work. We had a different situation on the other flank over on the Kingsport's left. You had a situation where you had just a straight cavalry fight, again, with the sheer weight of numbers, and we talked about this in the last video. The Kingsport brought a couple of extra units to the fight, so they were able to kind of dictate the terms. They did wind up, if you look, we're going to go to the end here. If you look, you can see the Powell River down there. They got a little bit out of position there. They had their backs up against the river. And I kind of think that, in my headcanon, the way this happens is the Blue Army winds up getting outmaneuvered a little bit. And with their backs against the river, they have no choice but to fight even harder. The Red Army knows they've got a secure line of retreat. They can always slink back. And that's kind of what happened. So here we're looking at the end of the battle, and you can see how the Blue Army has got this big salient up on the left-hand side, and that right side is about to collapse. So the Army of Knoxville now withdraws in good order, and that's one of the other key things to observe here, is that in most of these fights, because the terrain is so bad and because the fighting is so brutal, most of these armies are able to retreat in good order. Nobody gets their backs up against a wall. That may change. That can change very quickly. But for now, what you'll find is that our armies, if we go back to the campaign map, the Green Army is able to retreat back to Harrogate, or maybe even along this white track, although that's going to be hard because the weather's getting bad, to Tazewell to head off this army. Again, looking at the campaign map, you've got a Kingsport army that's threatening to cut off the supplies of the Army of the Pines. We'll talk about that more in the next video. For now, what we should do is take a look at. So that's Napoleon 1066. Look for the poll. Should be going live in about 15 minutes from the time I publish this, if I remember to actually, schedule it. Now we need to look at Caleb Hines. I sent him a little reminder. He had mentioned that he was going to be doing a fight, and he just hadn't quite got around to it yet. So I sent him a reminder because he does some really interesting things. First of all, Caleb is another one of these guys who sits down and goes through the Solo Wargaming Guide strategy, process where each side, Red Army, Blue Army, they develop 3 strategies. And then after you've got those 3 set down on paper, you roll to see which of those 3 is the one that is selected by that particular force. And what that does is it allows you to set up strategies absent knowledge of what the other guy is doing. You can see how we've numbered them here. In the case of the Red Army, they're coming down from the Cumberland Gap, and they actually have 3 routes of attack that they can use to get to Sneedville, which is off to the right-hand side of the map. They can take the main road, which follows Powell River, and this is what most of the battles we've seen have done. Or they can take this kind of middle road with the ridge directly to their north, or they can go down a little deeper into a broader valley. And again, these roads, now I should point out, these roads are not shown on my map. Take a look here. I on the campaign map, I have it set up that all of these yellow roads are unimproved. The white roads count as moving cross country, and those are the only roads you can take. But here's where Caleb differs from my interpretation. He says, hey, that's dumb. I'm going to jump on Google Maps. I'm going to see what other lesser roads are in that area. And that's what 1, 2, and 3 are. We'll allow it. This is your campaign as much as it is anyone else's. Now, also, it keeps things interesting, because now you've got a question of, is the armies of Knoxville going to take this gap here to the left? And I don't, is that... I don't know what the name of that gap is. I'll have to look that up and splash like a label or something right here, or a footnote. I believe the one over here where you see the Jones Division flag is Parkey Gap. That is the gap where we saw a battle that the King's portions defended that gap. They suffered very few casualties, and they really kicked Knoxville in the teeth last time. Forgive me, I can't remember which battle that is. Go back and check the last video, you'll see. Now, the strategies that were not selected, but were set up for the Army of the Blue looked a little something like these 3 circles here. How far from that gap are you going to advance before setting up your defense? 1, 2, or 3. This is Caleb Hines' way of trying to, sort out some order from the chaos and allowing for a situation where it's entirely possible that, depending on how the dice rolls come up, that the Jones army could wind up in the backfield. If they had selected this third option over on the left and the Army of the Pines had marched straight south, you might have had a pursuit situation where the Jones army was behind the Army of the Pines to the west of them and then chasing after them back towards Sneedville. As it happens, that's not what happened. Caleb's blog is Refactoring My Brain, and you can read all of the sordid, messy details on his blog. I'm going to put links to both Napoleon 1066's battle and Caleb's battle in the description. I'll also try to put the link for... it turns out one of the reasons I couldn't see Napoleon's first battle is that he had posted that to his Command and Colors enthusiast group. So if you're into Command and Colors and you use Facebook, make sure you log in and you jump into Napoleon 1066's group, because it is by far the most interesting group going right now, and I feel confident saying that even though I don't know anything about either of those things. But I can tell you, it's the best example of those two put together that I've ever seen. So that's got to count for something, right? Now, back to Caleb's fight. As I was saying, the ultimate rolls come up as... Whoa, wait a minute. Before we get to that, I also should point out Caleb does something a little different. Rather than taking William Sylvester's advice and equally weighting all 3 of those battle plans, he weights them based on how much sense they make. Turns out that the most aggressive, call it defense if you will, for Kingsport would be number 3. Well, after rolling the dice, Caleb winds up coming up with Knoxville taking the easy road. They are going to take that northern route along the best road that they've got, and Kingsport is only going to advance up to number 2, the second circle there. So the narrowest part of the gap between the ridge and the river, that's where they decide that they are going to make their defense. And now things get even more interesting, because Caleb is really good with maps. And this is not just a topographic map, but it's also kind of a 3D render of the area where this battle is going to take place at Fugate Ford. Remember that we are still in that week where the armies of Kingsport have an easier time crossing the river. However, that doesn't come to play here. But what you can see is exactly how rough and ready this terrain is. The topographic lines here, I think those are 40 feet. So pretty rough going for the boys. And then, like I said, he's very good at the map. So let's take a look at things from the point of view of Kingsport. This is where the battle is going to be fought. You can see the Powell River there on the right-hand side. There's a nice crescent-shaped hill that the road kind of climbs up and over, and that's going to be the hill where the Jones army makes their stand. Thus far and no further. It's really interesting to see how tall that bluff is over on the left-hand side, up in the upper part of the screen, and how rugged these hills are. This is not terrain where you want to be engaging in any kind of cavalry engagement if you can help it. And then what we're looking at is a table that's really, I mean, this is pretty narrow, right? Not quite as narrow as the fight that we saw in Parky Gap, but here you can see the forces set up, and he's using volley and bayonet, I believe. Remember that Caleb Hines is the guy that did the Miracle of Big Stone Gap, and here we have Ridge along the near side of the table and the river along the far side of the table with this very narrow gap. It's going to play into the hands. Oddly enough, I think this kind of plays into the hands of Knoxville. They are outnumbered, so the difficulty here is that Kingsport can't bring their superior weight of numbers to bear. However, because they get to the hill first, because they are on the defense, things go really well for them. They're able to set their artillery right up on the road and just commandeer and take command of that right-hand flank. The cavalry are able to sweep around on the left-hand side. He has treated the gully through the center of the battlefield as impassable. So this is a battlefield with really two avenues of approach where the two armies can meet, and one to the right flank and one to the left flank. And because of all those woods, there's not going to be a lot of shooting, save for along the road. And this is a long and grinding affair. Once again, the army of Knoxville is able to grind out significant casualties among the invaders, but they're not able to carry the field. So they retreat in good order. The battle takes long enough that once again, the Jones army opts not to pursue. They have had quite enough. Thank you very much. Look, it's starting to rain, and it looks like it's going to rain tomorrow and the next day. We're going back to Sneedville. We're going to hunker down there. If anybody comes to approach, then we'll come out. Remember, this is an E-class village that does not have walls, so we're not going to have a siege. You're going to have to meet them outside of the town. Pronouns are not your friend. The Kingsport army cannot hunker down in town and defend it there. They're going to have to meet whatever army winds up showing up on their doorstep outside of Sneedville. They may be able to defend some fairly narrow passes or a river crossing, but the town itself isn't going to provide much shelter for them. So that's where things stand here. Those are the two. We've got Napoleon 1066, Caleb Hines, with two very different looks. And again, the picture that you're looking at here is really just kind of the aftermath of the battle, where the army of Knoxville withdraws. I will say this. I think that this was good for the Army of the Pines to do. It does bleed out some of the strength of this Jones army, so whoever does wind up taking them, if next week we find that the Army of the East marches north to take Sneedville from the south, then they're going to have a much easier go of things. Now, I haven't calculated all of the casualties. That will happen after we determine exactly which of these 6 battles is the battle that will be canon for our campaign. And we'll just go down the dates real quick. It's October 3rd, and I can tell you guys definitively what the weather looks like through the end of the week. Get out my notes here, and we'll kind of zero in on that. This is what I have, and we talked about the mistake I made last time. So on the 3rd and the 4th, it'll be clear skies. Remember, on the 4th, we always have our armies take a day, pull back, take a day, recover your wounded, brace, get ready for the road, and then it's going to be, light rain. Well, that's no effect for the first day, but heavy rain and then snow. These are going to start grinding armies to a halt. And again, it's entirely possible that this fight is the last fight. If we have 2 days of snow to start here in early October, that'll be the end of the campaign. It really puts a lot more pressure on Knoxville, and that's why I think bringing the Army of the Pines into the fight is a good call, even if they wind up losing this battle. Yeah, even if their victory is Pyrrhic, I think bleeding these guys is important, and we may wind up having another battle in terrible weather next week. But that is a video for another time. Later, basically for the rest of this month and moving into next month, we're going to basically... I got something big planned. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. No spoilers on that one. This will be kind of operating in the background. We may do some quick and dirty live streams just to keep things moving here and not put a complete pause on the Sneedville War, because like you, I'm really interested in what's going to happen next. The anticipation is wonderful, and it really is a big part of the joy of wargaming, not knowing what's going to happen next. We're not writing a story here. I don't know what the end result is going to be. There are simply too many variables to be able to predict what's going to happen. You got to play the game. And as they say, on any given Sunday, anything can happen. This might wind up being a 6-week fight. Remember, we started in early September. We are now into the second week, still in the first week of October. It could be a 6-week campaign. Good on you, Kingsport, for calling it as you see it, although it could be clear. Maybe we have clear skies, and that makes it very easy for your armies to march around. But we'll get to that. Like I said, that's coming up in the future. Tune in for the next edition of the Sneedville War, starring you. Until then, I'm praying for you.